Newmarket Heath at dawn. There is a certain coldness to the place that chills even the bones of the men who have called it home for decades. Mist hangs heavy across the gallops, swirling like the breath of old ghosts. The grass is slick beneath 1,000 hooves, and the sky, painted in dull grays and blush pinks, gives the world an ethereal unreality. For outsiders, this is a holy ground, the Sacred Heart of British horse racing, where tradition is measured in centuries and fortunes are made or broken at the click of the starting list. Arthur Penhaligon stands beside the rail, frost crunching under his Italian shoes, hands buried deep in the pockets of the cashmere coat. He is not a horseman by blood, not even by proximity. He is a creature of the new age, a tech millionaire with more ambition than pedigree, desperate to carve his name into the granite wall of the old world. Yet, for all his millions, for all the calculated bravado that has made him a legend in Silicon Valley, his jaw is tight now, his eyes narrowed not in confidence, but in dread. Pilgrim, his prized stallion, a creature bought with a sum so scandalous it made headlines, trots out onto the track. Sleek, dark, every muscle trembling with potential energy. Pilgrim is more than a horse to Arthur. He is a promise, a ticket, the key to a kingdom that has always been just out of reach. Around Arthur, trainers and grooms, men with muddy boots and weathered faces, watch, some with curiosity, some with disdain. He can hear their mutters, the brittle laughter, the unspoken judgments that twist the morning air sharper than the frost. A whistle pierces the silence. The trainer gives a nod. Pilgrim moves forward, his hooves muffled by the wet grass. The exercise rider, a lean woman with the easy poise of the born horseman, leans forward, murmuring into Pilgrim's ear. Arthur holds his breath. This is the rehearsal before the main event, the dress rehearsal before all of London's old money, the press, and most crucially, his investors. The stallion breaks into a canter, then a gallop, his mane whipping, the ground eating up his strides. Arthur feels a flush of pride, the familiar thrill of a well-oiled machine humming under his control. But then, as the horse approaches the far edge of the gallops, a figure materializes from the mist. She stands alone, at the edge of an ancient track, a narrow lane that once carried Roman legions and now disappears into nothingness. Her hair is wild, tangled by the wind, her coat patched and faded. There's a quality to her stillness, untamed, defiant. Pilgrim slows. The rider urges him on. Arthur sees the tension in her shoulders, the anxious set of her jaw. The horse stops, refusing every coax, every command. He lifts his head, staring through the mist. At first, Arthur thinks it's a trick of the light, a shadow or some stray animal. But no, the horse is transfixed. The girl lifts her hand, almost lazily, as if she's beckoning an old friend. Pilgrim steps sideways, ignoring the pressure of the bit, the heels in his side. "Come on, you stupid animal," Arthur hisses through gritted teeth. The trainers exchange glances. The whispers begin, first a trickle, then a flood. Pilgrim breaks away, cantering off the track, straight toward the girl. The rider shouts, trying to haul him back, but the horse is gone, unreachable, eyes locked on that solitary figure. The girl steps lightly aside, barely touching the earth, and with a swift, practiced motion, she vaults onto Pilgrim's back. For a moment, horse and girl are outlined against the rising sun, a living silhouette. Then they vanish into the swirling fog, swallowed whole by the ancient heath. Arthur is frozen. For a heartbeat, nothing moves but the clouds of his own breath. The humiliation is instant and complete. The £1,000,000 stallion, his pride, his future, simply gone, led away by a ghost. Around him, trainers shake their heads. Laughter, low, cruel, curls through the air. Arthur can almost hear the headlines screaming in his mind. Tech mogul loses control. American money can't buy English legacy. He knows already that the phone calls will begin within the hour. Investors demanding answers, journalists sniffing for scandal. His hands clench inside his coat. His vision blurs with a cocktail of rage and shame. But even as the crowd disperses, as the old guard returns to their routines, Arthur stands rooted in place, staring into the fog. He feels something shifting deep inside. A fracture, a crack in the polished mask he has worn for years. For the first time, Arthur is not the master of his story. For the first time, the game has rules he does not understand. What did Pilgrim see in that mist? Why did he surrender so easily, not to fear, but to something older, deeper, something that felt like memory? The mist thickens. The sun climbs. Somewhere far off, a horse's whinny echoes, and Arthur, still and silent, knows that nothing will ever be the same. The morning slips away, and by noon, Newmarket is buzzing with rumors. Arthur can feel the storm gathering, even behind the thick brick walls of the Black Horse, a pub older than the United States itself. He steps inside, the cold air giving way to the dense warmth of beer, old wood, and sweat. Sunlight fights its way through stained glass, illuminating floating dust and the faces of men who have never missed a day at the track. The hum of voices is low, secretive, the soundtrack to a world built on gossip and silent wagers. Arthur's phone buzzes in his palm, again and again. Every notification is another small explosion, a fresh headline, a new message demanding explanations. He leans against the bar, knuckles white as he scrolls through a flurry of texts from his head of PR, his CTO, his biggest investors. Their language is a flurry of demands. What happened? Where's the horse? Was it stolen? How soon can you recover? But Arthur knows there's no answer that will satisfy them, no spreadsheet to balance this disaster. He glances at the clock. It's not yet 1 p.m. and already the day feels longer than most years. A tap on his shoulder jerks him back to the present. The bartender, a wiry man with a nose bent twice by life, nods toward the far end of the room. "Private call for you. Says it's urgent." Arthur crosses the creaking floor, weaving past locals clustered around battered tables. In the booth at the back, he settles in, steeling himself as he lifts the phone. The voice on the other end is sharp, impatient, a hedge fund titan who'd once called Arthur the future of racing. Now the tone is ice cold. "I told you, we bought a champion, not a circus act." Arthur swallows, trying to summon his trademark composure. "It's not what it looks like. The horse, there was a security breach, I'm handling it." "Security breach?" The investor laughs, short and cruel. "The only breach I see is in your credibility. The tabloids are circling, Arthur. Either you get that horse back or your board will want blood." Arthur starts to protest, voice wavering, but the line goes dead. He lets the phone drop onto the sticky wood. For a moment, he stares at his own reflection in the window, watching the cracks spread in real time. His empire, his invitation to the inner circle, crumbling, undone by a moment of lost control. He is barely aware of the eyes on him. Old trainers, jockeys, the pub's regulars. Their conversations grow quieter when he walks by, their glances tinged with a blend of suspicion and satisfaction. Arthur forces himself not to shrink under their scrutiny, but he feels it, the outsider's weight, heavier now than ever. A whisper floats over from the bar, thick with accent and judgment. "Can't buy luck, not even with Yankee gold," someone mutters, and laughter follows, mean and knowing. Arthur turns, lips pressed tight. He's about to leave when a shadow falls across his table. An old man lowers himself into the seat across from him without asking permission. He moves with the deliberate care of someone who has spent a lifetime watching and waiting and always knowing when to act. The man's suit is out of fashion, his cap battered, but his eyes are alive, sharp, dark, and deeply amused. "You Arthur Penhaligon, then? The tech messiah with a £1,000,000 mistake?" Arthur bristles, fighting to keep the anger from his voice. "Who's asking?" The old man grins, missing a tooth or two. "Finn. Been round these parts longer than most buildings. Saw your little show on the heath this morning. Word travels faster than horses, son." Arthur sighs, wanting this conversation to end before it begins. But something about Finn's steady gaze holds him in place. There's no malice in the old man, just the unhurried confidence of someone who's never cared about titles or fortunes. Finn signals to the bartender for 2 pints, then leans in, lowering his voice. "Pilgrim, your champion. He's not just a runner, is he? You know what you bought, or just what you paid?" Arthur stiffens, caught off guard by the question. "He's the best-bred colt money can buy, or so I was told." Finn laughs, soft and raspy. "Money's only half the story. That horse, it's got the road in its veins, son. You can train out the wild, maybe, but you can't outbid blood." Arthur's eyes narrow, curiosity flickering. "What do you mean?" Finn's face shifts, voice growing quiet, almost reverent. "Pilgrim's got gypsy blood. Not the kind they brag about in the catalogs, the kind they hide because it scares them, because it remembers things they don't want remembered." Arthur frowns, feeling the old world press against his logic. "You're saying the horse recognized that girl?" Finn shrugs, sipping his pint. "Not her exactly. Maybe something in her. Or maybe the wind just changed, and he remembered home." A hush falls over the pub as Finn's words settle. Arthur studies him, searching for the catch, the con, but finds only sincerity. Finn glances left and right, then leans in closer. "Listen here, son. If you want your horse back, you don't chase him like a lost wallet. You follow the blood. Find the lorries, the old caravans near the fens. Ask for a girl named Elara. That's your map." Arthur reaches for his wallet, but Finn waves him off, then changes his mind and accepts a crisp note with a wink. "Thanks for the pint, lad. Here's hoping you learn to listen before you run out of things to lose." Finn stands and shuffles away, blending into the blur of locals and smoke. Arthur sits, stunned, the words looping in his head. Caravans, the fens, Elara. The information is so strange, so impossibly out of step with his world of data and deals, that he almost laughs. But something in Finn's tone gnaws at him, a promise of answers, a dare to step outside the boundaries he's drawn around his life. The laughter at the bar grows louder as Arthur stands and tosses back what's left of his drink. He knows now there's no going back to the comfort of strategy meetings and quarterly reports. There's only the fog, the legend, and a single, fragile hope. He slips out into the street, the roar of the pub fading behind him. Newmarket is alive with scandal, tabloids already snapping photos, headlines drafting themselves. He ignores the cameras, the questions shouted at his back. For the first time, Arthur doesn't care about the optics, the spin, or even the price. He is propelled not by ambition, but by a flickering, unfamiliar urge, something dangerously close to wonder. Night falls as he drives toward the fens, the GPS blinking uselessly on the dashboard. He follows Finn's directions, guided now by instinct, by the feeling that something is unfolding just beyond the reach of his understanding. The city slips away behind him, the lights growing dimmer as the land flattens, darkens, and the roads narrow. Arthur thinks of Pilgrim, of the girl with the wild hair, of the promise in Finn's eyes. He is an outsider still, but now, for the first time, he wonders if that might be a gift, a chance to see things as they really are, not as they're supposed to be. As the car rolls into the darkness, Arthur is no longer chasing a horse or even his own reputation. He is chasing a ghost, a story, a truth that refuses to be bought or tamed. The road unwinds before Arthur like a ribbon dropped across the flat, endless land. The further he drives into the fens, the more the world seems to lose its familiar shape. Gone are the tidy hedgerows and stately manors of Newmarket. Here the landscape is wild, lumpy fields scattered with old stone walls, ponds reflecting the bruised sky, and pockets of fog that drift across the road as if called by some ancient spell. His headlights catch flashes of water and the glint of old caravan roofs scattered among clusters of twisted trees. He pulls off the main road, tires crunching on gravel, following Finn's words. Find the lorries, the old caravans. Ask for a girl named Elara. Every rational instinct in Arthur's body wants to turn around, to call the police, to do something that makes sense. But there is something else now, a strange pull, an echo in his chest that refuses to be ignored. He drives until the GPS loses signal, and the only light is the silver thread of dawn just beginning to touch the horizon. Ahead, he sees them. A loose circle of caravans, both old and new. Some are battered, paint peeling, others gleam with careful restoration. There's a campfire at the center, a few people gathered close, their faces half lit by the flames. Children chase a black dog through the grass, and a man in a felt hat tunes a battered guitar. As Arthur parks, he is painfully aware of the incongruity of his expensive car, the city suit, the uncertainty that clenches his gut. He steps out, the door thudding shut behind him. Silence falls. The dog stops barking. Every face turns toward him. A woman in a bright skirt draws her children behind her. The guitarist lowers his instrument, eyes narrowing. Arthur stands alone, the stranger, the outsider, a living reminder of the line that has always divided these two worlds. He takes a breath, fighting the urge to retreat to the safety of his Range Rover. I'm looking for Elara, he says, voice too loud in the open air. No one answers. The silence is dense, pressing in on him. For a moment, he feels absurd. A rich man hunting for his stolen million-pound horse among people who owe him nothing. But then, from the edge of the circle, someone steps forward. She's younger than he expected, maybe 20, but there's a self-possession in the way she walks that makes her seem older. Her hair is wild, her eyes dark and quick. She wears a patchwork coat, boots scuffed by 100 muddy roads. I'm Elara, she says, her voice steady, her accent musical but unmistakably local. You're Arthur Penhaligon. He hesitates. I am. I believe you have my horse. Elara doesn't flinch. No one has your horse. Pilgrim chose to come here. There's a difference. The campfire crackles, the silence stretching between them. Arthur is aware of the eyes, Elara's family, her community, watching, weighing, judging. He glances at the caravan nearest to him, where an old woman sits with her hands folded, face lined by both age and the hardness of long memory. "I just want to see him," Arthur says quietly. He's not just an investment to me." Elara studies him, as if she's looking straight through the careful suit, the defensive bravado to the cracks underneath. "You bought him for glory," she says. "For the race. That's not what he was bred for." Arthur's frustration flares. "I bought him because I saw something in him. Potential. Spirit. I gave more than anyone else would have." She interrupts, shaking her head. "You gave money, not spirit, not understanding. Pilgrim has blood you can't see in a pedigree. He comes from the road. Our road. My family bred horses like him for generations. Horses that remember the old ways." There's a murmur from the group, and the old woman finally speaks, her voice low but clear as bells in the mist. "It's not about ownership, boy. The horse remembers the road, the fire, the songs. It remembers home." Arthur's pride prickles, but his curiosity is stronger. He kneels, lowering himself to their level, his voice softening. "Help me understand. Please." Elara nods, gestures for him to follow. She leads him past the caravans, deeper into the camp, where Pilgrim stands in a rough paddock, untethered. The horse looks different here, less polished, less anxious, his coat gleaming in the faint dawn. Elara approaches, holds out her hand, and Pilgrim steps forward, breathing in her scent, resting his head on her shoulder. Arthur is struck by the ease between them. No halter, no lead, no force, just trust. He steps closer, cautious. "Why did he come to you?" Elara runs her hand along Pilgrim's neck. "He didn't come to me. He came to himself. Horses know their own. He smelled the smoke, heard the songs. It's in his blood. The world you come from. Numbers, data, performance, it's all noise to him. But this is silence. This is memory." Arthur looks down, something shifting inside him. For years, he's believed that anything can be solved with enough money, enough logic, enough will. But here, in this camp, among people who measure wealth by something older than bank accounts, he realizes how small he is, how little he knows. A man joins them, Elara's father, his face weathered and solemn. He lays a hand on Arthur's shoulder, not unkindly. "You want him back? You have to understand what he is, not what you want him to be." Arthur nods, feeling the weight of the words. In the silence that follows, Elara hums a tune, old and haunting. Pilgrim's ears flick, his eyes softening. The sound is more than a lullaby. It's a language, a bridge across centuries. Arthur listens, letting the melody soak through him. And for the first time since the disaster on the heath, he feels the edges of his panic recede. The sun lifts higher, burning off the mist, casting the camp in gold. The people relax, the children resume their game. The tension dissipates. Arthur is still an outsider, but something has shifted. He has been given a chance, not to command, but to learn. He turns to Elara, hesitant. "Will you show me? Teach me what he needs?" She considers him, then nods. "If you're willing to listen, if you can forget what you think you know." Arthur smiles, a flicker of gratitude in his eyes. "For Pilgrim, I'll try." As they walk back toward the campfire, Pilgrim trailing behind them, Arthur senses the world tilting on its axis. He came for a horse. He found a story, a secret, and perhaps the beginnings of a home he never knew he was missing. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a new question takes root, one that will haunt him long after he leaves the fens. What if everything he has ever wanted is not to be accepted by the old world, but to understand a new one. The morning deepens, stretching golden light across the dew-soaked fields around the traveler camp. Arthur stands awkwardly at the paddock's edge, suit jacket draped over his arm, shirt sleeves rolled up for the first time in years. The air is fresh, tinged with wood smoke, wildflowers, and the faint, sweet scent of horses. It is nothing like the sterilized tracks and high-tech training stables he's used to. Here, nature rules, and every breath seems to carry the memory of untold stories. Elara moves inside the paddock with Pilgrim, her boots silent in the grass. She says nothing, makes no grand gestures. The other travelers pay her little attention, going about their chores, patching a tire, hauling water, braiding a girl's hair beside a wagon painted in colors bright as summer fruit. There is no sense of spectacle, only routine, only trust. Arthur watches closely, leaning on the rough wood of the fence. Pilgrim stands at the far end, ears forward, head high, alert, but calm in a way Arthur has never seen. Elara stands a few feet away, hands loose by her sides, breathing slow and steady. She closes her eyes, matching her rhythm to the horses. For a moment, it seems nothing is happening. Then, gently, as if drawn by invisible thread, Pilgrim steps toward her. Arthur's mind races. He remembers charts and algorithms, trainers barking commands, heart rate monitors and protein shakes. Yet here, there is only silence and patience. Elara does not speak. She does not coax. She waits, steady as stone, until Pilgrim comes close enough to nuzzle her shoulder. A shiver runs down Arthur's spine. He sees the trust, complete and unquestioned, between horse and girl. It is as if Pilgrim recognizes something ancient in her, some note that harmonizes with his own restless spirit. Elara opens her eyes, smiles at Pilgrim, and rubs his forehead with the gentlest touch. Arthur can see the horse's muscles slacken, his posture soften. All the nervous energy is gone, replaced by something deep, something Arthur has no name for. He finds himself speaking without thinking. "How did you do that? He's always so high-strung with us, even after hours of training." Elara looks over her shoulder, her expression unreadable. "Because you were training him to win. I'm not asking him to do anything except be who he is. That's all a horse ever wants. Or a person." Arthur falls silent, struck by the truth of her words. He tries to recall the last time he simply was. No expectations, no agenda. He cannot remember. Elara moves around Pilgrim, humming a tune, soft and haunting. Arthur listens, realizing it's the same melody from before. Pilgrim follows her, step for step, no lead rope, no bit, just a quiet bond. "You have a gift," Arthur says quietly, almost envious. "He trusts you." "He remembers me," Elara replies, still not meeting Arthur's eyes. "Not me exactly. My family, the way we live. Horses have memories, just like people. Some things skip generations, but they don't disappear." Arthur leans further on the fence, feeling the splinters bite his palm. "The man in the pub, Finn? He said Pilgrim has gypsy blood, that you raised his kind before." Elara nods, her gaze growing distant. "Gypsy vanners. My great-grandfather bred them for pulling wagons, for racing across the moors, for living close to people. When times got hard, we sold most of our stock. Pilgrim's dam was the last. Sold to a broker, passed along through hands until she foaled him in a barn far from here." Arthur hears sorrow in her voice, a wound time hasn't healed. "So Pilgrim is, what? The last of his line?" "He's the last who remembers anyway." Elara strokes the white blaze on Pilgrim's forehead. He's not meant to be owned or tamed. He's meant to run, to choose. That's why he came back. A heavy silence falls. Arthur thinks of all the times he forced Pilgrim to train longer, harder, believing it was for the horse's own good, when really it was for himself, for pride, for acceptance in a world that never wanted him. He feels the fence shake, looks down, and sees a little boy, Elara's brother perhaps, watching him curiously. The boy grins, missing a front tooth. "You don't know how to be still, do you?" he asks. Arthur laughs, startled. "No, I guess I don't. That's what Pilgrim needed, stillness, and someone to listen." Arthur nods, strangely comforted by the child's wisdom. He looks at Elara. "So what now? Do I just take him back? Pretend none of this happened?" Elara studies him for a long moment. "You could, but he won't run for you. Not until you understand what he needs, what you both need." Arthur absorbs this. He glances at his phone, which he'd left in the car, buzzing with messages, missed calls, and urgent pleas from investors. For the first time, he doesn't care. The only thing that matters is the horse, and the question echoing in his chest. What am I really chasing? Elara breaks the silence. "Come back tonight, after you've thought about what you want. If you still want to fight for him, I'll help you. But only if you're willing to learn." Arthur looks at her, really looks, beyond the tangled hair and patchwork coat, and sees not just a girl, but a gatekeeper to a world he's always circled, never entered. He nods, grateful, humbled. As he leaves the camp, Elara waves and Pilgrim lifts his head, watching him go. Arthur returns to his hotel, the Premier Inn. Its sterile lobby and anonymous corridors a stark contrast to the life outside. He sits on the edge of the bed, loosening his tie, staring out the window as night falls. The silence is different now, no longer empty but full of questions, of possibilities. He thinks about Pilgrim, about Elara, about the people who have always been outsiders, by choice, by necessity, by fate. For the first time, Arthur wonders if that is where he belongs too. Not in the gilded halls of the racing elite, but in the wild, honest world of those who refuse to be tamed. The moon rises over the fens, pale and watchful. Arthur lies awake, the haunting tune Elara hummed playing over and over in his mind. He does not know what tomorrow holds, only that he will return. And that, for the first time in his life, he is ready to listen. Arthur returns to Newmarket just before dusk, the last of the sunlight dying in streaks of orange and gray behind the low-slung clouds. He parks the Range Rover outside the Premier Inn, its fluorescent sign flickering above the uniform, nondescript facade. The hotel is a symbol of modern convenience, predictable, sanitized, utterly forgettable. It could be anywhere in the world. For Arthur, tonight, it feels like a limbo, a waiting room between one life and the next. He swipes his keycard and enters his room, greeted by the faint scent of detergent and the hum of the air conditioner. The bed is made with military precision, the curtains closed tight. The surface is empty but for a television remote and a glossy folder of emergency procedures. Arthur tosses his jacket onto the chair, sits on the edge of the bed, and stares at his phone as it vibrates again. Another news alert. Another message from his board. More missed calls than he cares to count. He unlocks the screen and scrolls through the digital avalanche. There are headlines now, not just in the trade press, but splashed across mainstream media. Tech millionaire loses £1 million racehorse in bizarre incident. Arthur Penhaligon's gamble. Is the dream over before it began? The social feeds are even worse. Snarky memes, video clips of Pilgrim's escape, threads debating whether Arthur was ever a real horseman to begin with. Arthur turns off the phone and tosses it aside, resisting the urge to smash it against the wall. He stands, paces the room, runs a hand through his hair. The walls close in, magnifying the emptiness inside. Here, in this perfectly ordered space, he feels more lost than ever. He finds himself at the window, pulling aside the heavy curtain to look out at the parking lot. The view is nothing. A few cars, a row of hedges, the main road lit by lonely street lamps. The world outside seems indifferent, unmoved by his crisis. For the first time in years, Arthur feels stripped bare. No meetings, no interviews, no script. Just a man alone, staring at his own reflection in the glass. He slumps into the desk chair and opens his laptop, almost out of habit. Old reflexes kick in. He tries to draft an email to his investors, something reassuring, strategic, decisive. But every sentence rings hollow. His mind drifts back to the traveler camp, the warmth of the fire, the honesty in Elara's eyes, the simple trust Pilgrim showed to someone who asked nothing of him. The contrast is staggering. He closes the laptop. Instead, he opens his photo library, scrolling back through snapshots of his success. The awards dinners, the magazine covers, the selfies at launch parties, the crisp, sterile images of Pilgrim posed beside gleaming trophies. At the time, these moments had felt like validation, a way to prove to the world and to himself that he belonged among the elite. But now the images look lifeless, stripped of meaning. He sees not achievement, but hunger, a desperate need to be seen, to be accepted, to matter. He lingers on one photo, a candid shot taken on the day he bought Pilgrim. He's standing with the horse, beaming for the camera, suit immaculate, hair perfect. Pilgrim's eyes, in contrast, are wary, almost distant. Arthur sees it now. He hadn't at the time. The tension, the uncertainty, the unspoken question in the animal's gaze. Who are you to me? What do you want from me? Arthur leans back, the weight of memory pressing down on him. He thinks of his childhood, years spent longing for approval from a father who measured worth by success, not kindness. He thinks of school, of always being the outsider, of building walls around himself made of ambition and cynicism. And he thinks, with a new ache, that perhaps he and Pilgrim are more alike than he realized. Two misfits trying to run faster, to outpace the emptiness inside. Restless, Arthur stands and walks to the bathroom, splashing cold water on his face. He looks in the mirror, searching for the person he once wanted to become. All he sees is exhaustion and the smallest flicker of something else. Doubt, humility, maybe even hope. He sits on the bed, fingers idly tracing the pattern on the duvet. The silence is thick, but no longer suffocating. He lets himself remember Elara's words. He's not meant to be owned or tamed. He's meant to run, to choose. The truth of it burns through him. For years, he has tried to force his way into a world that would never fully accept him. He has bought, persuaded, and performed. But nothing real, no horse, no human can be compelled to trust, to belong. He takes out his phone again, not to check emails, but to reread an old text from his mother. Simple, supportive, sent months ago. Don't forget to enjoy the journey. The real prize isn't always at the finish line. He had dismissed it at the time as sentimental nonsense. Now it stings with clarity. Arthur turns off the lights and sits in the dark, letting the hum of the air conditioner fill the silence. For the first time in days, He is not plotting or panicking. He is simply there, present with his thoughts and regrets. He realizes he does not know what will happen with Pilgrim, or with his investors, or even with himself. But he knows one thing. He cannot go back to the way things were. At dawn, a faint light slips around the curtains. Arthur rises, dresses without thinking about the price tags, and steps outside. The air is crisp, smelling faintly of rain. He breathes deeply, feeling the edges of his old life falling away. There is no going back, he realizes. Not to the boardroom, not to the pretense, not to the lonely chase for other people's approval. He drives toward the traveler camp, his hands steady on the wheel. He rehearses what he will say to Elara, to Pilgrim, but finds that words are almost beside the point. What matters now is presence, humility, and the willingness to start again. To listen, to learn, to admit he does not have all the answers. As the sun crests the horizon and paints the fens in gold, Arthur feels a strange, liberating sense of peace. He is still uncertain, still afraid, but no longer paralyzed by shame or anger. For the first time, he is ready to return to Pilgrim not as a master, but as a student. Not to claim victory, but to find connection, however fragile, however fleeting. He drives into the day, leaving the hollow comfort of the Premier Inn behind. Every mile brings him closer to the life he has been running from, and perhaps to the life he was meant to live. By the time Arthur arrives at the traveler camp, the air is thick with wood smoke and the tang of brewing tea. The early sun glistens on the wet grass, painting the battered caravans and campfire circle in tones of quiet resilience. The world of investors and deadlines seems impossibly distant. For the first time in years, Arthur leaves his phone in the glove compartment, locks the car, and enters the camp as a man with nothing to prove. He's greeted first by silence, then a wary nod from an old woman plaiting a child's hair, a curious glance from the man tuning his guitar, and a quick, measured look from Elara's father as he sharpens a small knife by the fire. Elara herself is waiting for him by Pilgrim's paddock, arms folded, hair still wild, but her stance softer than before. Pilgrim grazes nearby, tail swishing, the very image of contentment. Arthur walks up slowly, feeling the eyes of the camp on his back, knowing that every word, every gesture will be weighed and remembered. "You came back," Elara says, her voice neutral but not unkind. Arthur nods, feeling honesty rise in his chest like something unfamiliar and pure. "I said I would, and I meant it." She studies him for a moment, then gestures to a battered log by the fire. "Sit. We'll talk." They gather around the flames as the morning grows. Elara's family joins them. Her father, silent and steady. Her mother, who pours Arthur a cup of tea without a word. Her younger brother, still peeking at Arthur from behind a mug. And a few elders, their eyes dark and knowing, faces marked by weather and wisdom. Pilgrim stands a little apart, but never far from Elara. Arthur takes a sip of the tea, finding it earthy and unfamiliar but comforting. He looks at Elara, then at her father, and finally, with a quiet breath, begins. "I want your help," Arthur says. "Not just with Pilgrim, with all of this. I thought I could do it alone. Buy my way in, train a champion, impress the right people. But I was wrong." Elara's father watches him, unblinking. "You want us to fix your horse? Or your reputation?" Arthur shakes his head. "Neither. I want to build something new. With you. I need..." He searches for the right words. "I need what you know, the connection you have with these animals, and I want you to be part of my team. Officially. not as staff, but as partners. A ripple of surprise runs around the fire. Elara's brother grins. Elara raises an eyebrow. Her father's lips press into a line, unreadable. Arthur continues, his voice low and steady. I want you, Elara, as a behavioral advisor, to teach us, not just me, but my entire stable, how to listen, how to connect. And I want to invest in your breeding program, to make sure these bloodlines survive. You've been pushed out for too long. You deserve a seat at the table. A hush falls. Elara's mother looks at her husband, then at Elara. Finally, the old man speaks. Words are easy, he says, his accent thicker, his tone skeptical. We've heard promises from men in suits before. They come when they need something. When they win, they forget us. When they lose, they blame us. Arthur bows his head, not in defeat, but in understanding. You're right. There's nothing I can say that will erase what's been done. But I can show you. I don't want this just for one race. I want it for all the ones after. I want a partnership built on respect. Elara leans forward, her voice soft but firm. And if we say no? If we ask you to leave Pilgrim here? With us? Arthur meets her gaze, heart pounding. If that's what's best for him, I'll accept it. I won't fight you. But I hope you'll give me a chance to do better. For a long moment, no one moves. The fire pops, a crow calls in the distance. Then Elara's father sighs, setting down his knife. We'll do it. On one condition, he says. You learn our way. Not just the tricks, not just the science. You listen to the horse, not the numbers. You come here, eat our food, share our stories, understand our scars. You treat Elara as your equal, not your employee. Arthur nods, relief and gratitude washing over him. Deal. No contracts. Just a handshake. And trust. Elara extends her hand. Arthur takes it and something shifts. An alliance forged not in boardrooms, but in honesty. Around the fire, the family relaxes, laughter beginning to ripple through the group. Someone starts playing a tune on the guitar, low and gentle. Even Pilgrim seems to sense the new piece, nuzzling Elara's shoulder and snorting softly. Later, as the sun rises higher, Elara walks with Arthur around the camp, explaining how her family bred horses for more than speed, for spirit, for connection, for memory. She shows him the small herbs she mixes into Pilgrim's feed, the calming routines she uses each dawn, the songs her grandmother taught her to calm frightened colts. Arthur listens, questions tumbling from him, not as a boss, but as a student, hungry to understand a world he'd once dismissed as quaint. They sit under an old oak tree, watching Pilgrim graze. Elara tells him stories of her ancestors racing across England, sleeping beneath the stars, winning respect not through force, but through patience and trust. Your world is built on winning, she says. Ours is built on surviving, on family, on never leaving anyone behind. Arthur feels a pang of longing, an ache for something he's never had. Maybe I've spent my whole life chasing the wrong finish line, he admits. Elara smiles, not unkindly. You don't have to choose, Arthur. You just have to know which race matters most. As dusk falls, the camp gathers for a simple meal. Arthur sits beside Elara and her family, sharing bread, stew, laughter. He listens, really listens, to their hopes, their grievances, their joy. For the first time, he is not the outsider. He is just another traveler, sharing the warmth of the fire. Before he leaves, Elara's father lays a weathered hand on his shoulder. You've got a lot to learn, but you're welcome here, so long as you remember that the horse comes first. I will, Arthur promises, meaning every word. That night, as Arthur drives back to Newmarket, he feels the weight of old ambitions falling away. In their place is something new, an alliance, uncertain but real. He knows the real battle is yet to come, but for the first time, he doesn't feel alone. He smiles into the darkness, knowing that tomorrow he will return. Not as a conqueror, but as an apprentice, ready to earn the trust of both Pilgrim and the people who truly understand him. The first time Elara and her older brother set foot inside Arthur's state-of-the-art training facility, even the horses seem to sense something unusual is about to happen. Morning sunlight glints off stainless steel doors and glass-walled offices. Trainers and staff move briskly in matching jackets. Everything about the place radiates order, efficiency, and expense. A fortress built to keep chaos, and perhaps even tradition, at bay. Arthur stands at the front entrance, watching Elara approach with her brother. She's wearing the same patched coat and battered boots, but her posture is straight, her expression unreadable. Her brother, taller, broader-shouldered, carries a canvas satchel slung across his back and surveys the stable like a general appraising a rival's camp. Arthur waves them in, his voice a little too loud in the clinical hush. "Welcome. I'll show you around." Elara nods, but it's her brother who breaks the silence. "Smells like bleach and plastic. Where's the horse in all this?" Arthur manages a nervous laugh. "You get used to it." He leads them past rows of stalls, each occupied by a valuable racehorse. Screens above the doors display real-time stats: heart rate, training progress, feed intake. Trainers glance up, eyes flickering with confusion, and, Arthur notes, a touch of disdain as they take in Elara's wild hair and the brother's worn boots. They stop at Pilgrim's stall. The horse looks out, ears pricked, nostrils flaring. Elara smiles and greets him softly, reaching through the bars. Pilgrim nudges her hand, calm as a summer afternoon. Arthur's head trainer Paul stands nearby, arms folded. Paul steps forward, voice clipped. "I assume you're the behavioral consultant Arthur mentioned. The horse has had enough of your adventures, don't you think? He needs proper rest, supplements, and structure." Elara's brother chuckles. "Supplements? Like the powdered stuff in your storeroom?" Paul bristles. "We use scientifically formulated feed, carefully measured for each horse." Elara pulls something from her satchel, a handful of dried wild herbs, roots, and a small jar of honey. "He's not eating that today. I'll make him a mash. He needs real food, not a chemistry set." Paul's eyebrows shoot up. "That's not protocol." Arthur cuts in, tension rising. "She's here at my request. Let's see what happens." Word spreads quickly through the stable. The Gypsy girl is feeding the million-pound horseweeds and honey. Elara's brother kneels beside her, helping measure out the herbs, while staff look on, some sneering, others just baffled. Elara sings softly as she works, the melody old and lilting. Pilgrim nickers, tail swishing with pleasure. Paul shakes his head, muttering, "This isn't science, it's theater." Elara stands, brushing her hands on her jeans. "You're wrong. It's care. Horses are like people. What's good for the soul is good for the body. He'll eat better, rest better, run better. You'll see." Arthur tries to maintain authority, but he feels the skepticism all around him. The room is thick with tension. Old world versus new, data versus instinct, tradition versus rebellion. He wonders if he's made a mistake, if he's putting everything at risk. But he also sees something in Pilgrim's eyes, a spark of trust that had never appeared during all the months of regimented care. For the next several days, Elara and her brother become fixtures at the stable. They arrive early, staying late, bringing armfuls of wild plants, mixing concoctions that make the trainers wrinkle their noses. Elara talks to Pilgrim, brushes his coat, and sometimes just sits in silence with him. Her brother sets up small rituals, rubbing a drop of oil on Pilgrim's nose, tying a thread of red yarn in his mane for luck. Staff whisper and roll their eyes, but Arthur watches closely, noticing subtle changes. Pilgrim grows calmer. His appetite returns. He seems less agitated during exercise, more willing to move, less likely to spook at the clang of a dropped bucket or the sudden shout of a trainer. Still, the pushback is relentless. One afternoon, Arthur walks into the feed room to find Paul and two assistants in heated discussion. "This can't go on," Paul says, lowering his voice when he sees Arthur. "You're undermining everything we've built. Her methods are unprofessional." Arthur holds up a hand. "She's getting results. That's what matters." Paul flushes, frustration boiling over. "It's not just about results. It's about discipline, safety, consistency. If the other owners find out you're letting some outsider play witch doctor with their horses, what do you think happens then?" Arthur hesitates. He feels the weight of every expectation, every doubt, every warning that he's jeopardizing not just Pilgrim, but his entire operation. Yet in that moment, he remembers the emptiness of the Premier Inn, the loneliness of every supposed victory. He remembers the way Pilgrim looked at Elara and the peace he found among her people. "I didn't hire her for appearances, Paul. I hired her because I believe she can teach us something we've forgotten. If you can't work with her, then you're free to leave. But I hope you'll stay and see where this leads." Paul bites back a retort, nods stiffly, and walks out. Later that week, Elara finds Arthur standing alone outside the stable, head bowed. "You all right?" she asks. "Not really. Everyone thinks I'm crazy." Elara laughs, the sound clear and warm. "Maybe you are, but crazy's better than hollow." They stand together, silent for a while, watching the sun slip behind the hills. "You're not alone anymore," she says quietly. "You never have to be." Arthur looks at her, the weight in his chest a little lighter. "Thanks for not giving up on him, or on me," Elara shrugs. "We're all outsiders somewhere, Arthur. The trick is finding the place where being different is exactly what's needed." As the night falls, Arthur knows the war isn't over. The culture clash is only beginning, but for the first time, he trusts the chaos. He welcomes it. Because in the collision of old and new, tradition and innovation, something stronger, something real, is finally being forged. And as Pilgrim leans his head over the stall to nuzzle Elara's hand, Arthur smiles. For the first time, he's not thinking about the next race, the next deal, the next round of applause. He's thinking about the moment, about trust, about building a future that no one, not even he, can predict. The stable is quiet after midnight, long after the trainers have gone home and the hum of the facility fades to a low electric whisper. Arthur sits alone in his glass-walled office, the glow of his laptop casting pale shadows across his face. Outside, the horses sleep in their stalls, the rhythm of their breath barely audible above the gentle rustle of straw. He should be exhausted, should have crashed hours ago, nerves dulled by the relentless grind of the past week. But something in him refuses to rest. Instead, he scrolls through video after video, searching for answers he's no longer sure can be found in data. Footage of Pilgrim flickers across the screen. The early days at the auction, the triumphant moments in training, and, most recently, the disastrous morning on the heath, frozen on a frame where Pilgrim's eyes glint, wild and distant, staring into the mist. Arthur freezes the image, leans closer, and finally sees what he missed before. Not fear, not defiance, something deeper, a call, a memory, a longing that has nothing to do with racing or winning. He sits back, haunted. Elara's words echo in his mind. He's not meant to be owned or tamed. He's meant to run, to choose. It's only now in the stillness that Arthur begins to understand. Pilgrim's struggle is his own, a life spent running for someone else's approval, never knowing if the finish line is truly his to cross. A faint sound draws Arthur from his thoughts. He stands, peering into the darkness of the corridor, and sees a sliver of light at the far end of the stable. He pads softly down the hall, his footsteps muted by the thick rubber mats. He finds Elara seated in the straw outside Pilgrim's stall, her back against the wood, eyes closed, breathing slow and steady. Pilgrim stands nearby, head lowered, as if listening for a song only he and Elara can hear. Arthur hesitates, feeling like an intruder, but Elara opens her eyes, nodding him over. "Couldn't sleep?" she asks, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Me neither." Arthur lowers himself beside her. They sit in silence, the kind that says more than words. For a while, the only sound is Pilgrim's soft chewing, the gentle shift of his hooves in the straw. "When I was a kid," Arthur finally says, "my father used to tell me that silence was a weakness, that it meant you didn't have an answer." Elara smiles, eyes soft in the dim light. "Silence is where you find the answers, or where the answers find you." Arthur watches Pilgrim, noting the way the horse seems completely at peace beside Elara. "How do you do it? Make him trust you like that?" "By not asking him to trust me, by just being here." Horses know when you're pretending, when you want something from them, when you're truly listening. They feel safe. Arthur nods, letting the words settle inside him. He spent so long filling the silence with orders, instructions, strategies, never pausing, never allowing room for anything real to emerge. He glances at Elara. "I think I've been pretending for a long time, maybe even to myself." "That's the thing about horses," Elara says quietly. "They don't care who you pretend to be. They only care who you are, right now." Arthur feels something shift inside, a loosening, a letting go. For the first time, he's not trying to prove himself, not to his investors, not to his trainers, not even to Elara, just to Pilgrim, to himself. They sit in silence a while longer. Arthur closes his eyes, lets the rhythm of Pilgrim's breathing slow his own heartbeat. When he opens them again, he feels lighter, clearer. The world beyond the stable, press releases, social media storms, boardroom wars, feels unimportant, even absurd. "Do you think he'll run tomorrow?" Arthur asks, barely daring to hope. Elara shrugs, a wry smile on her lips. "Only if he wants to. Only if you let him. What if he doesn't?" She looks at him, gaze steady. "Then you walk beside him. Show him you'll stay no matter what." Arthur nods, absorbing the lesson. He feels gratitude deep and unfamiliar for the honesty of this moment, for a truth no amount of money could buy. The hours slip by. Arthur eventually drifts off, head resting on his arm, breathing in time with Pilgrim and Elara. He wakes just before dawn to the sound of birds, a faint, golden light slipping through the high windows. Elara is already up, humming as she mixes herbs for Pilgrim's morning mash. The stable is a world of its own at this hour, peaceful, sacred, set apart from the chaos waiting outside. Arthur stands, stretches, and feels a strange calm. He moves to Pilgrim's stall, reaching out slowly. Pilgrim's head swings toward him, ears flicking, and for a moment Arthur expects the usual wariness, the subtle recoil. But Pilgrim leans into his hand, warm breath puffing against Arthur's palm. "I think he likes you now," Elara teases, grinning. "I think I finally listened," Arthur replies. He stands with Elara as the rest of the staff arrive, bustling with preparations for the race at Ascot. There's a different energy in the stable, tense, expectant, but not desperate. Paul, the head trainer, watches from a distance, his skepticism undiminished, but something in his stance has softened. He offers a curt nod as Arthur passes. Arthur gathers his team, Elara by his side. Today we let him lead. No force, no pressure. We trust him. There are raised eyebrows, but no protests. Perhaps they've seen the change in Pilgrim, or perhaps in Arthur himself. As the transport is loaded and the caravan of trucks and trailers sets off for Ascot, Arthur catches a glimpse of himself in a window, rumpled, tired, but more himself than he's felt in years. He turns to Elara, voice low. "Whatever happens today, thank you for teaching me how to listen." She smiles, squeezing his hand. Thank him. He's the real teacher. As the stable empties, the echo of Pilgrim's hoofbeats fading, Arthur stands alone in the silence for one last moment. He breathes in the peace, the promise, the possibility. Tomorrow will bring the world's eyes, the press, the investors, the doubters. But today, just for now, Arthur knows he has already won something far more important than any race. Ascot. The word itself hums with history and expectation. By mid-morning, the grandstands shimmer beneath a sky as polished as the silver on the royal box. Wealth and tradition parade down the walkways. Men in tailored suits and women in extravagant hats. The air bright with the snap of camera shutters and the low hum of speculation. Pilgrim's name is everywhere. In the betting slips, on the lips of hopeful punters, in the sneering asides of old money aristocrats who still consider Arthur's fortune an upstart joke. The parade ring bustles as trainers lead in their horses, each animal groomed to glossy perfection. Pilgrim walks beside Elara, head held high, his coat gleaming in the sunlight. He looks every bit the champion, until perhaps you see the scarlet thread braided into his mane, the faint scent of wild herbs clinging to his breath. Paul and the other staff keep a respectful distance, their roles quietly shifted. Arthur trails behind Elara, nerves jangling but face composed, an island of calm amid the storm of press and investors. Arthur's phone buzzes incessantly. "Good luck, no mistakes. Remember the syndicate is watching, and, cutting deeper than the rest, don't let us down." He turns it off and hands it to Paul without a word. Pilgrim's rivals are paraded, evaluated, and discussed. Camera crews jostle for position, fixating on Arthur and his horse. Questions fly. Will Pilgrim recover from his little adventure? Did the stable bring in outside help? Is it true the horse has gypsy blood? Arthur answers only what he must, deflecting with a smile, shielding Elara from the cameras as best he can. As the field is called to the starting gate, a hush falls over Ascot, taut and electric. The starting gates line up, jockeys mount. Arthur's heart hammers in his chest. Pilgrim stands quiet, no trace of the old anxiety in his eyes. Elara's hands are gentle as she fastens the girth, her words a soft murmur only Pilgrim can hear. "Let him lead," she whispers, stepping back as the gates clang open. The horses lurch forward, thunder and muscle and 1,000 dreams galloping into the roar of the crowd. But Pilgrim stands still. He does not flinch. He does not bolt. He remains statuesque in his stall, gazing at the distant stands as if he's seeing something far beyond the racetrack, something older and wilder than Ascot itself. A gasp ripples through the audience, followed by a rising tide of panic from the trainer's box. Paul rushes forward, face pale. A dozen cameras whip toward Arthur, ready to feast on the latest disaster. Arthur doesn't hesitate. Instead of yelling, cursing, or shoving his way onto the track, he simply walks, slowly, purposefully, past the officials and under the rail, his shoes sinking into the pristine grass. The crowd's murmur grows into stunned silence, and the media, hungry for a scene, lean forward, breathless. He approaches Pilgrim, who pricks his ears but does not shy away. Arthur places his hand on Pilgrim's neck, feeling the warmth, the powerful stillness there. For a moment, the rest of the world vanishes. He leans in, voice low. "It's all right. I'm here. You don't have to run for them. You don't have to run at all." Pilgrim exhales, a deep, resonant sigh, then noses Arthur's jacket, searching for reassurance. The other horses vanish into the far bend, the race all but decided in a blur of pounding hooves. But none of that matters. Arthur gently unfastens the reins, slips them over Pilgrim's neck, and leads him out of the gate out onto the grass, under the gaze of thousands. He does not rush. He does not hide his face. He walks beside Pilgrim as if they are the only two beings in the world, moving past the judge's box, the press pit, and the front row of stunned investors. The silence is absolute, broken only by the slow, deliberate crunch of Arthur's footsteps and the soft snort of the horse beside him. In that instant, the stadium is transformed. The spectacle becomes not one of triumph or failure, but of something quieter, more elemental, acceptance. Not the acceptance of society or the racing elite, but of the bond between a man and his horse, forged not in victory, but in trust. Arthur stops in front of the grandstand and looks up, meeting the eyes of those who have judged him for so long. He gives a small, almost imperceptible nod, an act of surrender, or perhaps of quiet rebellion. The crowd, uncertain, begins to clap. Slowly at first, scattered, then swelling into a wave of applause that is less about the race and more about the courage to walk away from it. Elara watches from the rail, eyes shining, her hands clasped tight. Paul, standing beside her, shakes his head in disbelief, but there's the ghost of a smile on his lips. Even the old trainers, those who never trusted Arthur, who muttered behind his back, are quiet, watching with a new kind of respect. After the race, the media descends, a maelstrom of microphones and flashing bulbs. Reporters shout questions. Was Pilgrim injured? Will you retire him? Do you regret your investment? Arthur looks into the sea of faces, all hungry for a story of disaster or humiliation, but he answers with honesty, voice steady. Pilgrim didn't want to run today, so I listened. That's all. There are more important things than winning races. A ripple of surprise moves through the crowd. For once, the narrative is not about the failure of technology or the collapse of a young millionaire's dreams. It's about something older, a moment of humility, of letting go, of learning to listen even when the whole world demands you charge ahead. Elara slips through the press to stand at Arthur's side. She says nothing, but the way Pilgrim nudges her shoulder tells the real story. Arthur meets her gaze, gratitude unspoken. As the sun sets behind the stands, Arthur leads Pilgrim back to the stable, applause still echoing in his ears. Investors call, some furious, some stunned, most silent. But Arthur ignores the phone. He spends the evening in the quiet of the stable, rubbing Pilgrim's nose, feeding him a handful of sweet hay. Elara sits beside him, cross-legged on the straw. "You did it," she says softly. "You chose him, not them." Arthur nods. "I think, for the first time, I finally belong. Not to their world, but to his." A gentle breeze stirs, carrying the distant strains of music from the grandstand. For a moment, Arthur closes his eyes and lets it wash over him, letting go of ambition, expectation, and fear. In the silence that follows, he finds peace. Tomorrow will bring new questions, new battles, but tonight, under the quiet roof of the stable, Arthur knows that he has nothing left to prove, and everything left to learn. A year passes. The world turns, the seasons spin their old wheel, and life carries on in Newmarket and beyond. Races are run, fortunes rise and fall, but for Arthur Penhaligon, the shape of his life has quietly, utterly changed. He stands now on the rolling hills of mid-Wales, a breeze tugging gently at his work shirt. The land is nothing like the manicured tracks or sterile hotel rooms of his old world. Here the air smells of heather and rain. Sheep graze on distant slopes, and wild horses run free, their manes rippling in the wind. In the valley below, nestled among stone fences and ancient oaks, lies a place that did not exist a year ago, the Penhaligon Sanctuary. It's a modest place built from the ground up with calloused hands and a kind of hope Arthur never found in venture capital meetings. There are barns and simple paddocks, not a security gate or a logo in sight. The sign at the gate is hand-painted, and every plank in the fence was hammered into place by Arthur, Elara, and a small crew of friends and volunteers who believed in second chances. At the heart of it all stands Pilgrim. He is older now, but even more magnificent. His coat glossy, his step proud. No longer a commodity, not even a competitor, but a symbol of something hard-earned and real. Children come to the sanctuary to brush his coat, to feed him apples, to listen to Elara tell stories of horses and roads and freedom. They do not care about his bloodlines, his price tag, or his victories. To them, he is magic. Arthur is not the man he was. He spends his days in jeans and work boots, mending fences, leading group tours, and learning to read the moods of horses from Elara. He no longer wakes to a barrage of emails or frantic headlines. His phone stays mostly off. There is no investor pressure, no board meetings, no demands for ever higher stakes. His wealth funds the sanctuary and supports animal rescue groups across the country. It is enough. Elara is always nearby, her laughter rolling over the fields, her hands as deft with wildflowers as with a frightened foal. She and Arthur work as a team, teaching local children and families about the old ways, the dignity of animals, the possibility of redemption, for horses and for people. One bright spring morning, a school group arrives, a handful of children with disabilities, their teachers cautious, their parents hopeful. Arthur greets them at the gate, gentle and patient, introducing them to the horses one by one. Pilgrim is last. He stands perfectly still as a small girl, nervous and shy, approaches with her walker. Elara kneels beside her, holding her hand. It's all right. He's gentle. He remembers what it's like to be afraid. The girl laughs, a clear, joyous sound, as Pilgrim dips his head and lets her pet his soft nose. The moment is small, but to Arthur it is everything. A reminder that real victory is measured not in trophies, but in the breaking of barriers, in the trust that can bloom between two creatures who once knew only fear. After the children leave, Elara finds Arthur standing on the hillside, watching Pilgrim graze under the wide Welsh sky. "You look happy," she says, nudging him with her shoulder. "I am," he replies. "I never thought I'd say it, but this is better than any race, any win." She smiles, her gaze following his. "He's free now. You both are." Arthur nods. The old hunger for recognition, for status, for a place at someone else's table, it is gone, replaced by something solid and lasting. He has found his own ground, a place where he is no longer the outsider, no longer pretending. He turns to Elara, his voice quiet. "You know, if you'd told me 2 years ago that I'd be running a sanctuary with you in Wales, I would have laughed you out of the room. If you'd told me I'd trust a tech millionaire with my family's bloodline, I'd have done worse." Elara teases, bumping him gently. They laugh, and in that laughter is the story of every mile, every heartbreak, every lesson hard won. As the sun sets, casting gold across the hills, Arthur and Elara walk back to the barn together. Inside, a crowd has gathered for the sanctuary's anniversary celebration. There is food, music, and stories. One by one, people stand to share what this place means to them. A safe haven for animals, a second chance for those cast aside, a bridge between worlds once thought irreconcilable. Arthur listens, his heart full, and when his turn comes, he stands at the front, hands slightly trembling. "I spent most of my life chasing the wrong finish line," he says, voice steady but full of emotion. "I thought I had to win, to prove myself, to belong. But Pilgrim and Elara taught me something different. Sometimes the most important race is the one you run for your own soul. Sometimes the greatest victory is giving up control and finding where you truly fit." The crowd is silent, attentive. Arthur looks around the room, at Elara, at Pilgrim standing proud in the open doorway, at the faces of strangers who are now his family. This sanctuary exists because of all of you. Because you believed that broken things can be mended, that old wounds can heal, that outsiders can find a home. There are tears and laughter, applause and hugs. The evening stretches late, full of music and hope. Outside, under the starlight, Arthur finds a quiet moment by Pilgrim's side. The horse lifts his head, nudging Arthur's shoulder. "Thank you," Arthur whispers, "for everything." He feels a peace he has never known, as if every road, every risk, every loss has led him here, to a place where he is needed, where he is enough. The wind rustles the grass, and somewhere far off, a fox barks. Arthur smiles, knowing the world will keep spinning, full of uncertainty and change. But here on this patch of Welsh earth, he has found something lasting. Not a conquest, not a trophy, but a purpose and a family. The story ends, but the work goes on. Rescuing, healing, learning, listening. Arthur knows there will always be new arrivals at the gate, new stories to write. That is as it should be. Because the race that matters most isn't won by speed or cunning, but by heart. By the willingness to begin again. And as the sanctuary settles for the night, Arthur stands beneath the vast, starlit sky and breathes in the wonder of belonging, at last, truly, to himself.